My name is Sarah Harwood, and I'm going to be defending the nativism theory of language acquisition. Please excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold, so if I cough, I'm really sorry. Um, okay, so let's start and just review a little bit of the information we've already discussed in terms of the nativism theory. So, it was developed by Noam Chomsky. And this theory hypothesized that children acquire language because they're born with an innate ability to do so. In other words, they're pre-wired for language. Um, this pre-wired piece of their brain is also referred to as the language acquisition device, which again is just the innate ability to develop language. Um, so the main logical argument for this innate ability is the argument from the poverty of the stimulus. So, poverty of the stimulus basically is the argument that natural language grammar is unlearnable given the relatively limited vocabulary available to children, and therefore is supplemented by some sort of innate linguistic capacity. The other support for nativism um, comes from the fact that nativism accounts for the rapidity of and completeness of language acquisition in children. Um, it also accounts for systematic nature of acquisition across languages, abilities, environments, cultures, everything. It also accounts for systematic natures of errors, complexity, and also complexity of grammar, or how children acquire language so easily. So, when I started to do research on um, current studies being done on nativism, I really found a lot of this hybrid research. And one article in particular talks about the hybrid of empiricism and nativism as the explanation for language development. So, in the article by Katrin Lindner and Annette Hohenberger, sorry if I said that wrong. Um, anyway, they published an article in which they briefly go through and discuss all of the theories and summarize how it's a combination of all of the theories: behaviorism, nativism, usage based, everything. Um, it's a combination of all of those theories that makes language acquisition possible in kids. Um, they again attribute language acquisition to a combination of all these theories. However, after watching the video from this week, The Secret of the Wild Child, I believe it's a great um, example of an experiment that supports nativism. So, as we saw in the video this week, had language development not been able to be attributed to nativism and the innate ability to develop language, then Jeannie would never have even had the slightest ability to communicate through language, and in addition, would not have been able to learn language so quickly. So, although her abilities were extremely limited and were not very functional, the state of her isolation and lack of exposure was so severe, and yet her language was not non existent. It was behind and, like I said, not 100% functional, but it was still there. So the experiments performed on Jeannie's language development after she was discovered, I think, really speaks volumes about the nativism. As I said before, nativism accounts for the complexity of grammar and how quickly children and how easily children acquire language. In the first summer after Jeannie was discovered, she was already able to functionally use over 100 words in her vocabulary. So, her lack of exposure to language provided such a unique opportunity for an experiment on how nativism and how that innate ability functions in a child's development of language. So, as we talked about before, the poverty of the stimulus is the most logical support of the nativism theory. Um, as I said before, poverty of the stimulus is the argument that natural language grammar is unlearnable given the relatively limited vocabulary available to children and therefore is supplemented by some sort of innate linguistic capacity. Linguistic Nativism and Poverty of the Stimulus is a book written by Alexander Clark and Shalom Lapin. It goes into more detail on this support, but basically they go on to explain that while humans learn languages with a combinatorial syntax, productive morphology, and phonology, other species do not. So humans have a unique ability to learn languages and process it. Poverty of the stimulus, basically, I mean, think of how you use baby talk to talk to, like, oh, mama or dada. But eventually they start to pick up that mom and dad is the most accurate way for them to speak. And that's not because that's what they hear the most, because I'm sure they hear a variety of different explanations for what to call their mom and dad. In addition, I mean, throughout their whole developmental, I mean, all the way up through preschool, kindergarten, teachers and parents all use such an elementary vocabulary when speaking to these children, yet they're able to decipher what the correct grammar and correct linguistics are necessary for proper um, communication and functionality. So, in summary, I believe that nativism is truly the best argument for language development in children. Jeannie's a prime example of how a child who is so secluded and kept away from language opportunity, and really any even sound opportunity because she was punished so severely for making noise, um, but was still able to move forward and develop a fully functional language in a very short amount of time really speaks volumes about the LAD in children and their innate ability to um, acquire language. So, thank you. And that is all.